Breaking news. Ukraine has struck 2 sanctioned Russian ships carrying weapons and military equipment all the way in the Caspian Sea. In fact, this means that Ukraine has started targeting not only tankers in the Black Sea, but now it's unsafe for Russians even in the Caspian Sea. And notably, news of the transport ships being hit came a day after Ukraine's first attack since the start of the full-scale war on a Lukoil platform operating on the Caspian Shelf. But the main news that is truly shocking right now is that, according to the reputable publication The Atlantic, the United States under Donald Trump's administration essentially gave Ukraine the green light to strike Russia's shadow fleet. The White House noted that this correlates with the United States itself seizing tankers off the coast of Venezuela. And according to the publication, Trump does not object to Ukraine striking Russian ships and in some cases approve providing Ukraine with intelligence to target Russian energy facilities. What do you think about this news? But let's discuss everything in more detail in this episode. I'm Alexei Peachy. Let's discuss this together. But before we start this episode, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, and be sure to leave any comment under this episode. This helps. It helps YouTube's algorithms promote this video. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel, Peachy News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we post breaking news as it comes in. So Ukraine struck 2 sanctioned Russian ships that were transporting weapons and military equipment in the Caspian Sea. The Special Operations Forces Command of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reported this. The destruction of the transport ships became known a day after Ukrainian drones also struck a Lukoil oil production platform on the Caspian Shelf. Near Kalmykia's coast, the roll-on roll-off ship Rachmaninoff and dry cargo ship Oskar Sarija were attacked. This was reported by Vystavki. According to their information, these vessels, quote, are used for military purposes and are under United States sanctions due to their involvement in transporting military cargo between Iran and the Russian Federation. The operation was carried out jointly with the insurgent movement Black Iskra, which provided the Ukrainian side with information about the route and cargo of the attacked vessels. The Special Operations Forces does not specify exactly what the ships were transporting, but nevertheless states that the Special Operations Forces continue to take asymmetric actions to undermine the offensive capabilities of the Russian occupation army. Interestingly, in the report of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation on the morning of December 12, it was mentioned that 2 drones of the armed forces of Ukraine were indeed intercepted over the waters of the Caspian Sea. For some reason, Russian authorities gave no further comments and chose not to mention that 2 ships were attacked simultaneously. Ukraine has begun targeting Russian ships in new areas, now even reaching the Caspian Sea, previously out of reach. I should note that the attacked vessels, Rachmaninoff and Oskar Sarija, are owned by the MG Flot Company, which was blacklisted by the United States for transporting weapons for Russia from Iran. According to data from the Starboard Service, the vessels really did frequently travel the routes from Russia to Iran and back. And for example, Oskar Sarija has entered Iranian ports at least 3 times since the beginning of this autumn. Researchers suggest that it was these vessels that transported, for example, Shahed drones and missile weapons from Iran. And Russia itself could be helping Iran arm its proxy forces in the Middle East region with some lighter weapons. And it's already obvious that after the strikes on the Shadow Fleet tanker in the Black Sea, Ukraine has set its sights on Russian logistics routes in the Caspian Sea. Just yesterday, on December 11, Ukraine began attacking Russian energy facilities not only involved in oil refining, but also those engaged in oil extraction. A drone strike was carried out on a platform operating on the Caspian Sea shelf. According to a Bloomberg source, long-range drones struck the platform operating at the Filanovsky field at least 4 times. This is Lukoil's largest oil field in the Russian sector of the Caspian Sea, with significant reserves of about 129 million tons of oil. Production is carried out from several platforms, and the oil is exported through the Caspian Pipeline Consortium, which, I remind you, is also being attacked by Ukrainian drones at the other end in Novorossiysk. As a result of the attack, production was halted at more than 20 wells in the field. Therefore, we can state that Ukraine is expanding the scale of its military campaign against the Russian oil industry. Since August, oil refineries have been subjected to constant raids. Some time ago, attacks on port infrastructure were added to these, for example in Novorossiysk, including because of them. The average daily export of petroleum products in November was only 2 million barrels, which is 21% lower than the average for this month from 2016 to 2024. Kyiv is shifting its strikes from oil refineries to export facilities, and if such attacks continue, they could cause long-term damage to Russia. But in the context of this episode, it's important that now there's also a hunt for shadow fleet tankers that transport oil and petroleum products from Russia. The latest vessel to be hit by maritime drones in the Black Sea was the Dashan, which is under Western sanctions. Moreover, the Wall Street Journal reports that according to their modest estimates, Ukraine may have already damaged about a dozen tankers of the Russian shadow fleet in different parts of the world. That's how our sanctions work, and this brings us to the most interesting part. Donald Trump actually supports such strikes on Russian tankers. Under Donald Trump's administration, the United States effectively gave Ukraine the green light to strike Russia's shadow fleet, writes The Atlantic, citing American and Ukrainian officials. While under Joe Biden, Washington was concerned about escalation and opposed attacks on Russian oil logistics in international waters, after the Republican administration took over the White House, the policy changed. According to The Atlantic, Trump did not object to the strikes and, in several cases, approved providing Ukraine with intelligence to target Russian energy facilities. Amid United States pressure on Kyiv to speed up peace negotiations, Ukraine has sabotaged 5 tankers from the shadow fleet transporting oil in Russia over the past few weeks. Russia in... In IE, it had nothing to do with some. ITEC doesn't even need to explain. Well, it's obvious now that this confrontation has led to a spike in ship insurance prices in this region. So, according to The Atlantic, despite the public rhetoric about wanting a peaceful settlement, Trump supported Ukraine's efforts to damage the Russian oil industry. In October, his administration sanctioned Rosneft and Lukoil, crippling some Russian exports and lowering Russian oil prices. At the same time, the United States acknowledges the risks to the global market, but considers the strikes an important tool for putting pressure on Vladimir Putin. And, as the publication notes, Washington hopes that the weakening of Russia's oil logistics will force the Kremlin to more actively seek ways to negotiate. So, as the head of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Sergei Lavrov once said, the geography of the war is expanding, but in fact not in Russia's favor. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode, and be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you found this episode interesting and got some useful information, you can support the work of this YouTube channel with your donation or a paid subscription using the links and details provided. In the description of this video, it says support the channel Alexei Pechi. Pick whichever format works best for you. I will be grateful for any support from you. That's all. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.